All right, well, good evening, Soulfire. Very, very good to see you again. We are here this Friday evening with two wonderful ladies that I'm so excited to be able to share this time with, Kim Summers and Jenny Townsend. We have decided to start kind of a new project. We're going to be doing this every other Friday. And we're calling it Love and Shadow, rich conversations about difficult topics, because we realize that there is, there's so much, the subjects of healing and spirituality. We focus so much on the love and the light side of things that we don't really take the time to dig beneath the surface and talk about the uncomfortable things. And it's something that's very much needed. And so we are all excited to be here tonight with you. And tonight, in our first episode, we are going to be talking about the subject of QAnon, coming back from QAnon. But before we get started, I do want to take a moment and introduce you to my co-hosts here. We have Kim Summers, Jenny Townsend. Jenny, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here tonight to have this conversation. I think it's much, much needed in the world right now. My name is Jenny Townsend. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I have my own psychotherapy practice, and I've been in practice since about 2005. And just noticed with a lot of my clients and people that I know that there's a lot of fear going on and a lot of confusion about what to believe, what not to believe, and whether to trust their gut or not. And that kind of is what I've concentrated on in my work, is helping people trust their own gut and follow their intuition and really just go from there, and not go towards fear, but go towards love and the light. So that's kind of a little brief description of me.
Awesome. And Kim, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for bringing us together and for so gracefully handling the first question that I asked when I was invited to be a part of this group. The question that I posed was, okay, I'm interested, and is this affiliated with a QAnon group? Because that felt important to me to ask, and we can talk about that later, but thank you. So my name is Kim Summers. I'm a licensed massage therapist. That's my profession. I've also, for the last couple of years, been flying around mainly to Florida. There's a spiritual community that I'm affiliated with there, and been doing some hands-on healing work, meditative practice, messages coming through me. Just these last 2 years have been profound, and allowing the healing work to come through me. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. I have been in 2 cults in my life, as I, recall my affiliation with them, and the QAnon experience feels very familiar to me. So that sparked the question. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Jenny. Yeah. And Molly.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think that's a great place to start because there does seem to be kind of a cult-like mentality about it. And I think one of the things that really brought us together on the subject is, all being, involved in the healing and spiritual community. We, I think, all seem to be pretty surprised about how deeply this infiltrated. And so, maybe let's talk about a little bit about the cult-like aspects. And before we get really going into the conversation, I do want to mention for anybody that's watching, if you have any questions or comments throughout, we are monitoring those. So please feel free and drop those in the comments, and we're going to do our best to get to those as we go through the conversation. But yeah, I think that's a great place to start, is talk about, some of the red flags that you noticed.
Yeah. Well, look, I have a request. Can
Sure.
we spend like 30 seconds and just kind of grounding?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's do that. That's always a nice place to start. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. And so if you'll just place your feet on the floor, if you're comfortable doing that. Your hands in an upright position, ready to receive. Focusing on the breathing. Just allowing whatever feelings to come up without resistance. Continuing to let the breath breathe you through our time together. Trusting that as we feel any discomfort in the conversation, that we let it be exactly what it is without turning away and running from it. Just leaning in and being curious. So just continuing to focus on the breathing. We welcome you here. So it is.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for the reminder for grounding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So your question, Molly, can you ask that question again?
So for somebody who has, had cult experiences in their background, what were some of the things, and I'll ask you guys too, we may have some folks that are here with us that are not familiar with what QAnon is. Do you think maybe we should take a second and talk about some of the basic things without getting too into the details?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So for anybody that's not familiar with what QAnon is, and if I miss anything, please feel free and jump in, guys. But so basically, QAnon is it's been defined as an alt-right conspiracy theory that's been widely debunked, and basically the premise is that trying to hit the highlights. Former President Donald Trump was a 5D chess player that had waged this kind of secret war against what's been referred to as the deep state, which involved a lot of members of the Democratic Party, and then a lot of Hollywood elite. And the belief was that he was trying to take them down because they were highly involved in this massive child trafficking ring. And the child trafficking was centered around, the satanic worship, a lot of really violent acts against children, and that, Donald Trump was going to be the savior. And what we've seen over the last couple of months, everything was supposed to come to a head on the inauguration of Joe Biden last month. And I guess, as I remember it, Donald Trump, in his farewell speech, they believed he was supposed to declare martial law. At that point, there were supposed to be, military tribunals that were going to result in public executions of not only political people, but, Hollywood elite celebrities. I mean, that ran the gamut all the way from, Lady Gaga to Tom Hanks and his wife, Rita Wilson. So these are the kind of things. And of course, there's a lot of people that are starting to question now, because obviously that didn't happen on the 20th, and there's a lot of people that are going through some serious dissolution, and so that's kind of the state of things right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I nailed it.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. That was really, really good. Yeah. So what I would like to talk about, piggybacking on what you've said, is just I'm working with some folks now that are really experiencing some very uncomfortable, what I would describe as a cognitive dissonance, because their brain was telling them that one thing was true, yet the outpicturing in the material contradicts what they thought was going to happen. Right. And it's causing this huge crisis within them. And it's like this crisis of what is real, what's not real. And that's, cognitive dissonance is an incredible place to be, incredibly uncomfortable place to be, and a scary place to be. So my first thought is just to demonstrate real compassion for folks that are going through this. I've heard some pretty snide comments about, folks that have subscribed to this belief system. And what I know in my experience, when I was looking back on it, when I was being deprogrammed, information from people didn't cut it. That's not the way that I was reached. The people that reached me were those that connected with me at the level of feeling, and were curious and welcoming me to express the grief, the sadness, these feelings that I was going through, rather than saying, well, you're wrong because let me show you this fact, and this fact. Right. So when we're dealing with folks who have subscribed to these conspiracy theories, let's be gentle. Let's really make a commitment to be gentle with these folks because they're hurting, So that's my approach. What I'd like to do, if I can, is just describe just a little bit about my background and my experiences that make this QAnon experience so familiar to me. Absolutely. And it might explain why so many people have been susceptible to these conspiracy theories. Yeah,
I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So my personal experience is this. When I was 6 months old in my mother's stomach, when she was pregnant with me, at 6 months pregnant, she needed to go to the hospital because the beatings from my father had gotten to be so bad. So here I am, this little being that's being formed in her belly, and I'm feeling all the blows. So I'm experiencing the abuse before I even leave the womb. Right. So it made me this very incredibly, highly sensitive being. And it made me very susceptible to looking for something outside of myself to make sense of it all. So the abuse continued. My mother divorced my birth father when she was 2. My mother also experienced a lot of childhood trauma. So it was trauma raising trauma. Yeah. When I was 15, I left my home to get married to a young man from the Pentecostal cult that I was raised in. He was my knight in shining armor. He saved my life. And I'm gay. So that created more of this twisting and discomfort and a desire to escape the discomfort. All right. So that's been the ongoing theme, was to try to escape my discomfort and not go to the shadow, not go to the depths of the wound. Later, in an attempt to not be gay, I joined Jehovah's Witnesses in my early 20s. Again, trying to escape the discomfort of my past. One thing that's really, I left Jehovah's Witnesses, got out of that, and many years have passed since, and I've realized that trying to escape the depth of the grief, attempting to escape the depth of the heartache and the sadness and the dysfunction, made me quite crazy, made me quite neurotic. Again, I went to the New Thought community, and my interpretation of those teachings were to just think the positive thought, just go to the light, just burn enough sage, just light enough candles, let's do some Palo Santo and everything's okay, right? That made me neurotic. And it made me spiritually arrogant. And it made me less able to connect with you on the human level, because I was all up in, those higher chakras, and I just did not want to be bothered with the things of the world, right? So I thought I was transcendent. I thought that because I burned the sage and did my meditations and thought that if I focused on anything that was going on out there, I was being negative. Well, what I learned was this, and it was through the 12-step program of AA, and it was also through a meditation practice, in the contemplative prayer practice. it's actually based in Catholicism, surprisingly. I didn't know there were Catholic mystics, and there are. There's a contemplative prayer practice. One is the welcoming prayer. And it's just 2 lines that I meditate on. And the 2 lines are this: let me ask, if you are finding yourself feeling anxious, in despair, trying, because of the circumstances on the outside, it teaches me the 2 lines are this: I lovingly watch my ego let go of its desire for security, affection, and control. And I embrace, meaning the higher self, who I really am, I embrace this moment exactly as it is. So I lovingly watch my ego let go of its desire of security, affection, and control, and I embrace this moment exactly as it is. So what I learned was my healing came and continues to come, because it is an ongoing practice. My healing comes from leaning into the discomfort, not trying to avoid the discomfort. What I've realized is the more human I become and the more compassion I have with myself, the more I heal.
Absolutely.
And the more compassion I have with myself, inevitably, the more compassion I'm able to have with others, and the more connected I'm able to be. So those are just the basic experiences that I've had. And so there's this need for groundedness. There's this need for not doing the spiritual bypass and just, operating up here in the higher chakras, making those lower, and even the hierarchy of the chakras is another interesting conversation we might have. But this groundedness, I've just realized how important the groundedness is, and embracing all of it, and not trying to make, in one of our conversations before, not make the winter wrong.
Right.
We have these seasons of our life, and they're all necessary. So the question becomes, how can we lean into the winter of our lives? How can we not try to escape the winters, but lean into them and let them, rather than make us bitter, make us better and more whole, WHOLE, as we embrace, the totality of who we are and who we've come here to be. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's just a snippet of my experience. And I found, let me say this, and I have found the folks that I'm working with that have had such challenges coming out of QAnon or cult mentality, they were these folks that did not possess this grounded spirituality. They would burn the sage, and they would do all of these beautiful activities, nothing wrong with them. But the groundedness wasn't there within them. They wanted to escape the discomfort of their own internal discomfort and the discomfort in the world. So that's the common theme and the thread that I've seen in this particular subject.
It's interesting, and Jenny, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts too, especially with the work that you're doing. But I've noticed it's been such a bizarre pairing of people that come from 2 seemingly disparate communities. And I've got people in my own family that are very, very diehard conservative, that haven't quite dipped into the QAnon, but are kind of at the level right underneath it, where they can't see, they were completely blind to a lot of the things that at least I thought were evident about, our former president. And so we've got, these diehard, conservative people, and I've noticed a common thread between, many of the people that I know personally, where, they have lived, they don't have a vocabulary for how to get to how to speak into the wounding that they carry, how to access it, how to voice it, because they were raised without it. They, I mean, it was kind of this, you know, they came from, you know, parents that came through the Depression where you just kind of had to grit and get through it. And then there's World War II and then Korea and Vietnam. And they themselves kind of carried this, you know, we've got to just focus on the positive and just get through it. And so, you know, I've noticed that kind of mindset in with one half of the people that I know that are kind of in that area. And then on the other side are folks that, you know, seemed prior to this so different in mindset because they do speak healing. And some of them, you know, one in particular is somebody that, you know, I've respected as a teacher and mentor and healer. And you know, I still, you know, love this person to death. She's brought me in touch with so much healing from myself, for myself. But you know, she, you know, I know that she has that vocabulary, but you know, there's something else, you know, that seemed to have, you know, dropped. I don't know. It's maybe it's you know, having the vocabulary but being able to make the connection into the wound. Maybe I don't know. But such a fascinating and seemingly bizarre combination of people that got pulled into this belief system.
Kim, what I want to say to you is like, thank you so much for sharing your story. That's so hard to, and so brave to come out and like share your story about trauma. And that's one thing that I want to say too, is that, I mean, there's so many things. I'm sitting here taking notes about trying to keep it in order, but you know, that's in the mental health field and focusing on trauma. What we know is that when you experience a traumatic event, and if it's in the womb, it has no words, right? Because there are no words. It's just feelings and emotions and fear. And like you were talking about these higher chakras, yes, you can develop those higher chakras, but the lower ones, the root chakra, is all about safety, right? And so if you don't have a feeling of safety from in the womb, which, you know, so many people experience trauma in the womb, you know, I mean, just there's more trauma than we know out there. And we're going through a traumatic event right now with COVID and racial violence and political QAnon, all the things. So what we know about trauma is that it stores itself in our brain, like freezes us in time when we experience that. And so, like you're saying, people either can't access it because it's too early and they don't have words for it, but their body reacts to a trigger, right? So if you experience trauma as a young child and you don't remember it, but your body remembers it, things can trigger that you don't even expect. It's sound, a temperature, a voice, a time of day, a texture, something. And yes, all the positive thinking in the world is not going to heal that trauma because it's frozen in time, and you have to go back there. The trauma modality that I've been trained in, EMDR, talks about how you have to distract your mind so that both sides of your brain can process that trauma. And it's on a neuro pathway with all the similar kinds of traumas that happen, right? So yeah, I love sage, I love chanting, I love the contemplative prayer, I love all of those things. But if you don't access that frozen memory and let your brain and your body process it, then it isn't going to go anywhere, right? So, and we all are searching for comfort and love and compassion. And we know that fear-based techniques work on people who have traumas, right? Because it feels like, I don't know, Kim, maybe like, is this something that, like when you joined the cult, was the fear-based technique comforting to you? What was the draw? Like, can you explain that?
I think you hit the nail on the head. There was a sense of safety, because I had found community, I had found purpose, and those are things that I didn't have before. They filled this void that I did not have, and it was a sense of safety and security. And again, that's foundational. That's grounding. So that led to, and we had an answer that you didn't have, and meaning the Jehovah's Witness experience, and the Pentecostal experience. And it was a Pentecostal cult experience. There was 36 churches just like ours in the US, and Jim Jones was part of that movement, and he moved to Guyana and did what he did. So it was a sense of community, a sense of purpose, and those make us feel safe, don't they? When they have those in place. But it was a false sense of security. It was a false sense of community, because as soon as I disagreed with them, within, and things just weren't fitting, but you didn't question it. You did not question that. So it was conditional community.
Yeah.
But there is that sense of safety that I think so many people are running towards. We're social creatures. We want to feel the sense of belonging, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
So it really gave me that.
Do you think, Kim, do you feel like the church created a sense of fear to kind of, you go in there looking for safety from life, life's normal peril, right, and then they create an additional sense of fear to kind of keep you under.
Yep. That's a perfect way to put it. There was this fear, in Jehovah's Witness and the Pentecostal cult. There was this sense of Armageddon, this doomsday, right?
Right.
QAnon would have called it January 6th.
Right.
So and if you subscribed and believed what this community believed, and I did, I bought it hook, line, and sinker, but it offered me the sense of security, because I would be saved from Armageddon. I wouldn't be one of those that would be destroyed in Armageddon. So there was this sense of safety, because I would be safe from this fearful event that was coming up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it makes me think about too the research into trauma too, and kids that grow up with trauma. Mm-hmm. Is that, like you said, Kim, you were talking about your parents and then their parents, like what they experienced. And Molly, I think you brought this up too, about like some of the traumas that generations before us had gone through. It just totally decimates the ability to be regulated or grounded. And so a lot of, if kids are growing up with parents that are dysregulated, there's no authority figure in the house, right? It's all upside down. Like, in family systems, they talk about how parents are supposed to be parents and children are supposed to be children. But if the parents can't be the authority figure that they need, then it makes it so difficult to trust or predict. So if someone comes around and says, this is the truth, this is how it is, these are the rules, then that feels like wonderful, right? Like finally somebody has something clear to explain to me. And that's, you just reminded me of that when you were just talking, Kim. So
that's certainty. Yeah, that's great, Jenny. I hadn't thought of that, but it is. It's that sense of certainty that offers that sense of security that a traumatized person probably hasn't ever felt.
Yeah. Right. And it's, like I was saying before, there's so many trauma triggers in our environment for people that have been traumatized, that you may be a parent and you may, look like you're doing all the right things on the outside, but if you're struggling with your own trauma and maybe your children trigger your own trauma, then you're not able to maintain that like consistent, predictable, secure parent person that they need, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that, I think that makes cults, religious figures, gurus of any kind, QAnon, political figures, I think that makes them very tempting to follow because they look like they've got their stuff together and will protect you from whatever it is, right?
That's good.
So yeah.
That's really, really good. So this leaning into the discomfort, this leaning into these feelings, we'll do anything to escape discomfort in this human experience. It's the funny, not funny, haha, but just we will escape. We want to escape pain at any cost possible. When I was in, which doesn't make us grounded. So one thing that I was talking to you about last time we spoke was my experience when I first got sober. One of the first times I got sober. There have been many ins and outs of the rooms of AA for me, because anytime I got to the fourth step, it says we will take a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So basically what you were asked to do was to make this list of all of these negative experiences you've had, these judgments you've had about people, this judgment, these secret things that you have done yourself that, so it's like coming clean, right? Just putting it all on paper. And for me, I would always quit at the fourth step. And the reason I would quit at the fourth step is because it was uncomfortable. It was asking me to get uncomfortable. And in my new thoughtiness, I thought, that's negative energy. I'm not going to give that any attention. Well, what I realized when I finally humbled myself and got desperate enough, we talk about the gift of desperation in the 12-step program. So when I finally humbled myself enough and did that fourth step and made that searching and fearless moral inventory of myself, what I realized is empathy, self-empathy came from that. Because I looked at all those ways that I had behaved and I thought, you did the best you could with what you had at the time. That was kind of the bottom. And then I could move that to those others in my life, my mom, my stepfather. They did the best they could do with what they had at the time. But this freedom came again in meeting that shadow, within myself and that shadow within others. And interestingly, when I met that shadow, it fostered empathy for myself and let myself off the hook. And I learned to be so much kinder to myself and so much kinder to others, So that fourth step, searching and fearless moral inventory of yourself. I think we should all do a fourth step. It's it's amazing work. Yeah.
It's interesting as we're talking about this and talking about, getting in touch with our shadow, that fearless moral inventory, and the fact that this kind of cult mentality is really solidified around comfort under the guise of this fear. One of the things that's really interesting is that I've listened to people that are now starting to like on YouTube and in interviews and stuff that are starting to come out of this QAnon world. And one of the things they talk about is that, during the time that they were really, it's almost like an addiction in a sense, listening to how, they're just so, just videos and videos and videos, days after days after days, all of the QAnon stuff, that there was a constant sense of fear that they were dealing with. And I'm wondering, we talk about that certainty and that safety. I wonder in this instance if that couldn't be replaced with a sense of purpose and a sense of not just purpose, but a righting of wrongs in the world. that, you being a part of this, this community, this thought process, and, put you in kind of like this the right side of the moral spectrum, and, giving you the sense of purpose. And even though you're scared to death all the time, there's still kind of a moral safety there. Do you think that that's possible?
I do. I mean, I think you just said everything about that. It was very much that sense of safety and security, but it went beyond that, because that sense of safety and security, thinking that I had finally found the truth, and that's exactly what Jehovah's Witnesses call the information that they have, the truth,
Right.
Capital T.
And the word that's just dropped in for me was righteousness.
Exactly. So again, I became incredibly, what I call spiritually arrogant, which made me devoid of my humanity, which made me devoid of an ability to connect with others on a human, empathetic, on that kind of level, and I craved it. I craved human connection. I didn't know how to have human connection,
Right.
Right.
And
then the spiritual bypassing that I was doing put up more of a wall, right?
Yeah. Well, and again, going back to the mental health world too, there is a theory called internal family systems that uses a lot of spiritual words too. They kind of navigate it for whoever they're using it for, but talks about how trauma splits us off into parts, right? So we have parts of us that like become very spiritually strong because they're protecting these exiled parts of us that are really harmed and scared, right? So I think, Kim, that's kind of what you were getting at as you were saying, I became so spiritually arrogant. Well, it was a protective part of you, protecting these younger, more vulnerable parts of you that could be harmed if you allowed anybody close, and they would hurt you again in that same way. So yeah, that's what I was hearing and thinking when you all were just talking about that.
Kind of like safety. My safety comes in righteousness versus safety coming in healing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and that parts theory always also talks about like when we get triggered by trauma that we're actually the age that trauma happened, right? So we're a scared little 3-year-old or in the womb baby or 10-year-old or whatever it is, and that age child doesn't have the maturity or vocabulary or safety to express. They just have, if it's so they just develop these protective parts that show up instead of like having to handle all of that uncomfortable stuff because they just can't do it maturity wise. So
very good. Very good. Very good. So and one of the metaphors that comes to me is the birthing experiences. It's like, thank God our mothers didn't try to escape the pain. We wouldn't be here, would we? So it's like, that's what I see happening within us individually and collectively. You look at what's going on right now, and you mentioned it, Jenny, with the racial injustice coming to the surface. We're seeing it. What's happening in Texas right now, COVID, QAnon, all of these things are occurring almost simultaneously as as this collective invitation for us to face the discomfort and to allow it to soften us and to be more compassionate with ourselves and others. People out in Texas without water and without electricity. Some of these are very, fine homes, but the money's not getting them out of this discomfort right now. So it's like this collective birthing process that we're going through. And as painful as birthing is, and as messy as birthing is, what we know is what comes out on the other side is absolute beauty, right? So that's the love and light. Yeah, great. Love and light, love and light. And let's make sure we sit with the discomfort and not name it bad.
Right. I like what you said about the self-compassion. I really try to get people that I work with to focus in on self-compassion because, you know, like you were saying, some of these homes are like, I mean, it's all socioeconomic, whatever it is. And so the thing is that you just it's helpful to say you're human. Of course you are going to be uncomfortable and
Mhm.
it's going to pass, right? Let's
Yeah.
just be in it and sit with it.
Yeah.
And that's how you heal it. You
Yes.
just sit with it and give yourself love. And if you're somebody that's been through trauma, you didn't ask for that. It happened to you, and you just have to love yourself
Mhm.
through it because you're
Mhm.
just normal for what you went through, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, the self-compassion piece is so key to
It
sit with that
truly is.
discomfort.
It
Yeah.
truly is. Buddha said, that's so good, Jenny. Buddha said, compassion that does not include yourself is incomplete.
Yes. Yes.
And I, if I can, mince words with Buddha, how dare I? It's like my compassion's not authentic if I've not had compassion for myself. I'm much more authentically compassionate towards you the more I touch that compassion within myself, if that makes sense.
And how can you give it out if you don't have it for yourself?
You
Right.
can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
So,
this is very good.
yeah. Yeah.
Kim, can we talk a little bit about, coming out of the cult environment, just kind of what your deprogramming process looked like? Because I think that's probably going to apply to a lot of these folks that are coming out of the
Yep.
QAnon days.
So my deprogramming process was experiential. There was no one person that I sat down with and we're going to deprogram you today, Kim. It didn't happen like that. It happened with this ongoing self-awareness and allowing myself to recognize that I couldn't spiritualize and positive think my way out of it. Mm-hmm. Quite honestly, it was there was plant medicine involved, psilocybin mushroom, and I did it in an environment where it was in a state where it's not decriminalized, and that's another conversation perhaps we can have. But what that experience offered me was to go deep into that shadow. I had someone who sat with me that I dearly loved and trusted. So I was able to access this part of the consciousness that you don't normally in everyday life you're able to access. So that was part of my healing path. But just to recognize that you can't positive think your way out of this, and to sit with the discomfort, lean into the discomfort, know that it will pass. Sometimes it comes in waves. Focusing on the breathing, all of this was part of my deprogramming process. There was not, like I said, there wasn't this one person who sat down with me, but it was just a series of experiences, and creating these new facilitated pathways in our brains, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you just mentioned somebody sitting with you, somebody that you trusted.
Yes, in the psilocybin mushroom experience, yes. And I have, let's see, 3 experiences, 3 journeys with the psilocybin mushroom. And as I said, it allows you to access the deepest, these deepest parts of your psyche that you're not able to access on a everyday basis.
Yeah.
So yeah, but having someone sit with you during that process that you just trust and know will be there to just create that sense of safety, it's of the utmost importance for me.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's I'm in the process of trying. I'm in the recovery process with complex PTSD. And it's funny, just as you were saying that last little piece, I was just had a little epiphany. I was like, holy shit, my whole childhood was a little cult-like, because my childhood was surrounded in this mythology.
Mhm.
And so, in the mythologies, we never looked at the things that were, ugly or true or hard to deal with, or, things just got swept under the carpet.
Mhm.
But, the breakthrough for me was also my psilocybin journey experience.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's been, it's changed my life in such profound
Mhm.
ways. And I did my first in 2013, so about 8 years ago, and have been doing them a couple of times a year since then. And it is the only thing I can look to as really starting to untangle and
Mhm.
untie those knots, and to, kind of undo the malformed links and reconnect the things that should be connected.
Yep.
Just the simple things like being able to touch my own self empathy,
Yep.
is massive. It's huge.
It's beautiful medicine. It truly is. And that's part of my upcoming work, is traveling where it is not criminalized,
Mm-hmm.
and to sit with people as they journey. And what we remember is those experiences that we've had, these traumatic experiences we've had. Wow, you can't read this in a book, you can't learn this in any classroom. It's like we have shown up in the school of life and experienced all these traumas that we've had. Now we can take those experiences and use them for good in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what an honor. What
Definitely.
an honor to be able to be used.
Yeah, to have
Yeah.
that compassion for others, to have empathy, to be with them as they do their journey too, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, and it's so interesting to hear you guys talk about psilocybin, and then thinking about how similar it is to what I was talking about the EMDR process, where
Yeah.
the eye movement or the bilateral stimulation distracts your brain so you can get to this, it's similar to the way REM sleep works. You're
Yeah.
able to connect imagery that helps process it, you know? And Molly, it's like you were talking about your growing up was a little cult like.
Mm-hmm.
So I've used the movie Moana a lot with my clients, like if they've seen it, which I love that movie. It's so beautiful, full of beautiful symbolism. But the fear of going off the island into the ocean, you
Wow.
know?
Yeah.
So to get to the heart of Tafiti, right? To
Mm.
get to
Right.
restore that heart, right?
Mm.
Well, and our brain is negative bias because it keeps us alive. It's a survival thing. So Moana's dad, like, no, you can't, because he had his own experience where his friend died, right? So no, you can't go off this island because you're going to die, and it's my responsibility
Mm.
to keep you safe. And
Mm.
so Moana went off on her own and, challenged her, like went to her calling, right? So I think that we just all are seeking safety and accompaniment with others too, so, and that's one of the things with trauma recovery is that, the trainings that I've taken also say the person that you are working with to help them with the trauma, the most important things is your relationship with them,
Mhm.
because they need someone to be a witness, a safe witness. So that kind of gets back to what you were saying, Kim, earlier about people who are in QAnon don't need us to say, you're wrong, that's wrong, you
Mhm.
don't believe that. They need us just to see them as
Mhm.
people.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep. Yep. That's so good. I think I've got a movie to see this weekend too.
Oh, it's so good. I love
I
Mona.
I love that storyline. That's a
Oh,
beautiful
it is
premise.
so good. There's so much more to it too. Molly, have you seen Moana?
I have, and it's awesome.
I love it. It's so beautiful. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You'll really, really enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, as we're talking about this and we're talking about, all of our different experiences, and then bringing in what's going on with QAnon, and, through Kim, your cult experiences, and even, the trauma in my own family. I recognize, my parents, weren't, trying to hurt me. They were doing things to keep me safe.
Mhm.
Mhm.
crazy. You know, the thread of this search for safety.
Yep.
And, you know, talking about the internal work to go in and tap in and find the healing and safety within ourselves.
It's so good. That's rich. That's very rich.
Yeah.
About 2:00 in the morning, several years back, I was feeling pretty sad, and I called myself fatally wounded. I just thought that, you know, there was no recovery from this. And then this message came through me that said, I can't change my past, but I can change the way I define my past. I have renamed this broken heart a heart that's broken open. And with this heart that's broken open, I have greater capacity for compassion for myself and for the world.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
So those words came through me because I was so feeling the wound. I was feeling the depth of the wound. But then the clarity came through, right? You know, as we allow the discomfort, as we allow these feelings to come through us, you know, as we own our feelings don't own us.
Right. Yeah.
So while I can't change my past, I'm at a place in my life where I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world, because it's made us who we are today, hasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I guess I'm trying to think of, you know, as we go forward, because I think that there are people, if we don't know personally, that, you know, we certainly know people that are in the process of coming out of this. And we've talked about, you know, understanding that there is a need for them to be seen. And I think one of the things that for me kept coming over and over was, you know, recognizing very clearly that, you know, the people that we're talking about, you know, are, like we were talking about, these are people that are wanting to do good. You know, they're trying, you know, their aim is to do something good. But, you know, what we think that, you know, the next steps forward might look like for us coming back into community with these people that are looking to reconnect and ground and you know, really touch back into reality and, you know, the actual certainty of grounded reality versus, you know, this you know, thing that they've been looking at for the last however long. What do we think that might look like?
So the line that comes to me as you say that is, people don't care how much you know, people care how much you love. And you can't connect with the folks that have been indoctrinated with this information at the level of fact. Yeah. You have to connect at the level of feeling. And what I've discovered is the less I talk, the better, quite honestly. Just to be there and sit and to allow them to express the feelings that are coming up for them. You know, I used to want to give you, well, this is why, and this is why, and this is why, and it's not effective. When when these folks are, you know, these are hurting people. When you've experienced this depth of cognitive dissonance, you know, the mind feels scrambled and chaotic and inability to focus. So all of these things are going on, and it's incredibly uncomfortable. Yeah. And certain behaviors might, you know, come out. You know, the feelings that you've suppressed all these years, for me, let me speak for myself, these feelings that I suppressed all these years were coming out sideways. So I lost friends in the process. You know, I was very judged by people that I called friends in the process because they didn't know. They didn't know. So the best thing that we can do, from my experience, is just to be there, and to connect with the love at the level of feeling rather than facts. I'm back. So to connect at the level of feeling instead of facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great, Kim. I agree. Uh-oh, we lost. Oh, there you are.
Are we all there?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that touches home in so many ways. These are, people that, are looking for love and understanding, and again, going back to, the wounding part, anybody that's wounded, whether it leads them to QAnon or leads them to some other type of purpose and healing, is really just looking to be held and seen.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Very good. Very, very good.
Yeah.
Well, I am just amazed and delighted at our connection.
I am too.
The three of us right here and beyond. I mean, anyone who's watching this, I'm so grateful for this community, and I'm just so grateful for the willingness to have these challenging conversations, because we're not connected if we're at the level of superficiality. So we're willing to go deep. And I just really appreciate this time. Really do.
I do too. I'm so thankful to you guys for being here and being willing to step into this container and have this conversation. And, this is like you said, Kim, you used the word rich. This is rich.
Yes.
It's good.
It is. And I think of soil. When you say rich, I think of soil, and it's like, that's the foundation. That's what these challenging emotions, if we're willing to let them be soil, that rich dirt from which beauty grows.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing things grow. Well, ladies, does that feel complete to you?
For now, right?
Stay tuned, more to come.
That's right.
Right.
We are going to be doing this every other Friday. So we won't be back next Friday, but we'll be back the Friday after. And if you give me half a second, I'll even tell you the date. It'll be the evening of March 5th.
Awesome.
Okay. March 5th.
Very good.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned. And thank you all so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I love and appreciate you all. Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
Bye.